Today we're going to talk about dog reactivity. Now, before you get too worried, I don't necessarily mean when a dog is unfriendly or reactive because he's aggressive. Sometimes dog reactivity, meaning a dog gets a little over exuberant about things, can be because he's just too excited. So we're going to talk about how to help you and your dog have better walks instead of him getting over exuberant, barking, lunging, maybe again just getting too excited because he wants to see the other dog, or on the flip side, he starts reacting because he's nervous or afraid and he's lunging and barking to make sure that those people or those dogs stay away. So not only have I personally been working with this with my clients for the past 20 years, but I had that dog. So I had Theo, my golden retriever, who I'm sure a lot of people think a golden retriever, they're friendly, they can say hi to anyone. But unfortunately, he had a bad experience when he was young, and that made him not want to be around other dogs. So he learned to cope by barking and lunging at the end of the leash to keep those dogs away. So my job was to teach him that it was okay to walk past other dogs and that he could actually pay attention to me instead of those other dogs. So I'm going to teach you those skills today in this short little video. So again, dog reactivity to me means a dog's really jumping at the end of the leash, whether it's because he's excited or fearful or he wants that thing to go away. But we want to teach them to be able to be calm and collective and to have a nice, peaceful walk with our dogs. So there's going to be a few key components in teaching our dog to walk nicely on a leash around other dogs or other people or squirrels. It really doesn't matter. It's fill in the blank what your dog gets too excited about. And this is where we want to figure out what that issue is. Is it people? Is it dogs? Are they squirrels? Is it cats? And there can be more than one thing. The first thing that we need to do is set up a management plan so that our dog's not put in that situation where he can't be successful. We need to put him in a situation where he can be successful. So you don't want to see your dog reacting. And I know you're probably about ready to hit stop right now because you're like, well, if I could do that, then I wouldn't have any problems. But what we're going to do is teach you again how to help your dog to have a nice walk so that it's not an issue for you. So when we're thinking about management, we have to think about our dog's point of view. If I have a dog who starts to lunge at the end of the leash when he sees other dogs because, again, he's overexcited or he wants them to go away, I have to find my little magic space. How far away from that dog does my dog need to be in order to focus on me with a really nice reward? So if I have something my dog really likes, like chicken or beef or steak, and he sees another dog and he can focus his attention on me instead of that other dog, that's my sweet spot. If, on the other hand, we see another dog and I'm pulling out this great value treat for him and he can't look at me and he can't take the treat, he's still too focused on that other dog, I've missed my sweet spot. I need to get more distance from that dog. So that's our first step. We need to figure out how much distance does my dog need in order to get the behavior I want. So once you've figured out that distance, your location where you take your dog for a walk might need to change. For example, when I had Theo and I was trying to teach him again that dogs were safe, he could look at me instead of be anxious about the other dogs and bark at them, that distance at the very beginning was a football field. So I literally had to have friends and family have setups with me at big open parks or schools so they could walk their dog on one end while I walked Theo on the other end and gave him his reinforcement. But don't worry, that space will slowly go from here and we'll be able to get it shorter and shorter. So by the time Theo passed, we went from our football field to me being able to just step off the side of the sidewalk. So if I took my dog to the park and I'm going down the park and we're going down a trail and my dog needs 20 feet away from another dog, I have to make sure that that path and that greenery and that grass will allow me and my dog to get to that 20 feet. So sometimes we can't take certain paths. So at one of our local parks, we actually have some boardwalks, and that's about probably 10 feet. So from here to here, and that boardwalk is 10 feet. So if I have a dog who needs 20 feet, we don't walk on that boardwalk, because I can't be walking my dog along and then up comes this other dog and we don't have our 20 feet. I've set my dog up to fail. I want to set him up to be successful. If I set him up to be successful, eventually we'll get there. We'll be able to walk on that boardwalk, but not until he's ready. Because the more times your dogs fail, the harder it is going to be to change that behavior. The more times they get to do that response, bark, lunge, that sort of thing, the harder it is. So our goal is to always make sure our dog's being successful, to really think ahead and make sure that we have that space that we need. Which also means that every time I'm out with my dog, I have to think about training. We step outside to go potty. If I'm in the front yard, I have to think that another dog might walk past. So I want to condition my dog that every time a dog walks past, I'm going to give you a reinforcement. And I also want to make sure that, again, if a dog's walking by, where do I go? Do I have an out that I can move my dog into that 20 foot or whatever your distance is to help him be successful? Every repetition of dog passing equals a good reward is going to help your dog learn that, and eventually that dog's going to start to look at you when a dog passes. So to continue on with our management, the other thing we want to think about is time of the day. So if I'm taking my dog to the park because I want to work on getting him around some other dogs and being able to condition him that dogs mean I'm going to give him a food reward and then maybe we can do a sit, I want to make sure that we see some dogs, but I also want to make sure that there's not too many dogs. So you want to kind of plan those outings to make sure you're successful. The next part of management is having the right training equipment. So obviously we're all talking about positive training here, so we're going to get rid of any harsh training like prongs, choke chains, shock collars, fear, yelling at our dogs. That all goes away. Goes away for this behavior and it goes away from all of our behaviors. We want to teach our dogs to be happy, confident, and to pay attention to us because we're valuable people, not because they're afraid if they do something else. The other thing about using punishments is we actually will end up making our dogs worse in most cases. So if you're looking at a trainer who's using punishment to get a dog to not react, that dog is learning a few things. Of course, that dog is learning every time another dog approaches, I'm going to get punished. So is that going to make your dog more comfortable about being around other dogs and more happy to be with you, or more stressed about going for a walk and more worried about what you're going to do? Yes, you might end up stopping that lunging and barking maybe for a little bit. A lot of times those behaviors will get worse, but it's not going to be great in the long haul. We want to teach our dogs that other dogs are good, or other people, or again, whatever your ex is, whatever it is that you're focusing on. Not only are they good, but they mean you have something more valuable. And that's where you're going to start getting your dog to eagerly see that other distraction and look to you for that reward. Eventually, you'll fade that reward and they won't get a reward for everything. But if you're increasing the distraction level or the difficulty level, we're still rewarding. So take Theo again. Football field, right? So he's getting rewarded. Dog walks by. Actually, his favorite thing was a toy. So dog walks by, he gets this grab it for a squeaky toy. So he's learned that every time he sees a dog, this toy appears. And this toy only appears when he sees another dog. It's never in his toy box. He never gets it for another behaviors. That dog, this toy. So once we get that conditioned response where he starts to see this other dog and he looks up at me like, did you see that other dog? If I get that reliably, then that tells me, okay, so we can go from here to here. Now we've decreased our distance 10 feet. I'm still going to reward now because I've increased that challenge. So I need to reward at this space too. And then once that's conditioned, then we do another 10 feet. And we just slowly again. So he's still getting rewarded as he changes that difficulty level. So if we're here, and this is where we're currently training at, and we see another dog over here, I may or may not reinforce him with a food reward, but I'm definitely going to let him know that he's done good. There's another dog, pay attention to mom, what a great dog you are. But to be honest, with Theo, and what I would really recommend is if you're still working on dog issues or any other issues, then I'm going to reward all the time. I really want to hit home that other dogs are good. Nothing to worry about. Focus on me. Life's sweet. Let's keep moving. So the training equipment we are going to use, we're going to use either front clipping harnesses, and that's where the leash gets attached to the chest, because that allows you a little extra control. So if my leash is here and I'm kind of up behind my dog, so he's kind of on the side, maybe out in front a little bit, when he starts to pull, that's going to turn his chest back towards me. Okay, so that I'm going to be able to gain his attention. The other training option is a head collar. So what that does is it goes around their nose and up and behind their ears. And so what that does is if we think about a horse and a horse's halter, if we have the horse's head, the whole body's going to follow. So again, kind of like this chest idea, if I turn my dog's head, his body's going to follow along. And then with both options, nothing's on that neck, so we don't have any gagging or hurting or anything like that. If I have a regular buckle collar on and my dog pulls, not only am I causing damage to his neck and his spine, but I'm actually going to lift my dog up. So his chest is going to start to get high, and that's actually going to put him in a more reactive stance. But by having him down here or down to the chest, then that's going to kind of keep him low to the ground and we can kind of move along. And then for our leash, we need to have a regular leash. A 6-foot leash has always been my preference. We don't want to have any of the extended leashes because that's not going to give us any control. And also with those big boxes that they come in, if there is any kind of pulling on that leash, you might drop it. You know, and the last thing that you want to have is your dog running towards the other dog or running away from the other dog with this big box chunking along behind them. That's not going to help your dog's behavior and might even make him more fearful of the situation. Then the next step we have is their training. What we're working on is teaching your dog every time they see whatever it is that you're working on, whether that's a dog or a person or a squirrel, that they're going to pay attention to you. Again, we're going to have that distance, so you need to find out what that space is. If my dog's in the right space and then I have the right value, things are going to go great. If I find myself not being successful and not being able to get my dog's attention, I've messed up. The distance is usually too short, or the treat isn't very good, or the toy isn't very good. We have to make sure that we have the tools in order for them to get it, for them to be successful if we really want to change that behavior. So every time you go for a walk, we have to remember we're training. Our dog's constantly learning. So every time that leash is attached and we go out, the training happens. So if you want to go to the park and you just want to go for a jog and you don't want to be on and focusing on your dog, what happens? Your dog stays home. You're allowed to go out and enjoy your life without training your dog all the time. But if you really want to change his behavior, you have to remember every time he's there with you, you have to be able to focus on him. So back to Theo. When I would go out for dog events and I had to have my display booth out, Theo wasn't with me. I couldn't take Theo to dog events because when I was out with Theo, especially around other dogs, I had to focus on him. I couldn't be chit-chatting with the people around. So that also meant when I took Theo for a walk, I never had my logo on. I never had my business shirt on because people are going to want to stop and they're going to want to ask me questions. If they had a dog, then I needed to keep moving. So I wanted to prevent that from happening. So that was another management. When we went out for a walk together, I wasn't chit-chatting with everybody else. We don't have to be rude about it, but we can just say, oh, sorry, gotta go, and keep walking with your dog. When we're working with dogs who are either reactive at the end of the leash because they're too stimulated or they're fearful or they don't know what's going on, what we're working on is changing those emotions. So our dog has some baggage. I always think about a dog sitting there with a bunch of suitcases next to him. And those suitcases represent how much baggage my dog has. So for Theo, he had a lot of suitcases. So I was constantly working on getting rid of some of those suitcases by building up that confidence, by helping him be successful. So if you want your dog to be successful, that's your job. We have to make sure that we're working with them on a regular basis. If you're not practicing this, you're not going to get very successful. So if you go out to the park or go for a walk once a week with your dog, it's going to take a long time. If you, on the other hand, go once a day or even every other day, you're going to move much quicker and your dog's going to learn much quicker. It's all about changing their emotions. Again, when your dog starts looking at you to the reward, we're changing their emotion from overexcited to agitated to paying attention to you, to being relaxed, happy, confident. The other thing that we can think about adding to our training equipment is actually calming aids. So if I have a dog who's really on edge, he's lunging at the end of the leash, he probably has some other things going on. So I might need to add some other calming aids, maybe some flower essences, maybe some tight-fitting jackets, or maybe some calming music, because I need to make sure that in his daily life, he's calm and collective and happy and feels confident. The other thing that we can add is we can think about food. Food is therapy. So if I have a dog who's barking, he's so whipped up, we consider that dog a hot dog, right? He's ha, 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 ha. So we want to cool that dog down. So food is energetically either warming or cooling. So if I have a hot dog and I'm adding a food that's really warm, I'm just going to be adding fuel to that fire. If on the other hand, I have a food that's cooler, I'm going to help my dog. So these are what we call add-ons. That with our calming aids, we can just add different things onto our dog's training program and again, treat the whole dog. It's not just about teaching them to sit and down and watch, but it's treating them to be comfortable and relaxed and happy. These all play a role together in your dog's behavior. So some of the warming proteins that we probably want to avoid for these dogs are things like chicken, lamb, venison, goat. Those are all warm to hot meats. Some cooling proteins that might assist with your dog's behavior are cool things like fish, rabbit, and duck. So those are the proteins that I'd probably consider when I'm feeding this dog. A fresh diet as well that's full of moisture, like a home-cooked diet or a raw diet, is always going to be energetically cooling and obviously always healthier for your dog too. So hopefully you find some of these tips helpful. And remember, this is a long process for a lot of dogs. And for some dogs, it's actually a lifelong process. So hopefully you found these starting tips helpful to get you and your dog on the right track. If you need more help, I do offer both phone and video consultations so that we can address your dog's behavior and his needs.